92.6 FM Radio Verulam, Wednesday morning, and we're welcoming a new face to Radio Verulam this morning, who will be joining me on occasion with various anecdotes and different things, and John's doing his first little bit today with us. Welcome to the programme, John. Good morning. How are you?
Very well indeed, thank you.
Right, and today it's something you've put together called Face in the Crowd, isn't it?
That's right.
Yeah. Right, so if you come a little bit nearer the microphone and tell us all about it.
Okay, thanks, Phil. Now, I don't know if you've ever had anything like this happen to you, but you could be sitting on a bus, having a drink in the pub, or even just walking down the street, and you can't help noticing that you keep getting quizzical looks and double takes from people. Well, if you're a male, you check your flies, but they're okay. Then some complete stranger will come up and say, "Don't I know you from somewhere?" Or perhaps, "Hey, you look just like someone I saw on the telly last night." Well, this used to happen to me quite a lot. You see, during the 70s and early 80s, I worked as a TV and movie background artist. It took me from lying face down in the pouring rain in dirty bilge water as a dead British commando to sharing the stage with Bob Hope at the London Palladium back in 1977 at the Royal Variety Command performance. From a Corpse to the Queen. Could almost be a song title. Usually as an extra, one was just a face in the crowd. But there were occasional close-ups or bits of business, maybe even a line or two. Enough to be seen and be semi-recognisable. Now, the usual first comment was, "Wow, that must be a lot of fun." Yeah, well, it was. If you like getting up at 3:30 a.m, and that was usually after playing a gig till midnight, catching the milk train from St Albans up to London, making your way to Shepherd's Bush or one of the other studios, and then into makeup and costume, onto the set, or maybe even bust out to a location, and then hung around, sometimes not in the best of conditions, until you get in front of the camera for maybe 2 minutes, and possibly a couple of retakes. Back to the studio before they have to start paying overtime, and that was all for 12 quid a day. Less agent's commission. The money's a bit different nowadays. Last time I checked, the daily rate was something like £85. Anyway, an example of what I mean. It was a BBC series about the development of the A-bomb. Oppenheimer it was called. The scene, it's midsummer in the New Mexico desert. We are the observers, dressed in shorts and T-shirts, and the bomb is about to be tested for the first time. Now we're sweating with the heat and anticipation. The thing is, it wasn't midsummer in New Mexico, but midwinter on Aldershot Plain, with the only relief being large slugs of brandy served between setups, just to keep us from freezing. Believe me, we finished that day feeling no pain and a lot happier than when we started. Now you could be a walk-on. For this you were given a specific task and direction. For example, you're over there. The director never knew our names. Get up from your chair and walk out the door. You were paid more money and repeat fees every time the programme was shown. Now the pinnacle for an extra was to achieve the dizzy heights of Walk On 2. This entailed unscripted dialogue. You over there. He still didn't know my name. Get up from your chair, walk out the door and say goodnight all. That was another couple of quid, and more repeats. You know, last year, I got a repeat fee for a job I did 35 years ago and was shown again on the Beeb. It's a shame they don't pay repeats for satellite TV showings, otherwise UK Gold would be as good as a pension scheme for me. Well, only last week, I was on the box 3 times. Mind you, that was on movies, and they never paid repeats. The only drawback to being featured was that unless you were a recurring character, a regular at the Queen Vic on EastEnders, for example, you couldn't be used again on that show. A common or garden extra could come back as different characters several times. Now this happened to me on a series called Ike. It was about General Eisenhower. He was played by Robert Duvall. You know, the same one that loved the smell of napalm in the morning and said, "Charlie, don't surf." An alleged affair that he had with his female driver, played by the gorgeous Lee Remick, during the war. I've been frequently called on this one. I was a GI, a British naval officer, various other pieces of set dressing. And then there was a wedding scene. and it was decided that I was a dead ringer for the actual soldier that got remarried. Now, the series was trying to be reasonably factual and accurate. I was immediately transformed into a US Army bridegroom in full-dress uniform, and at great length we shot the wedding sequence. Now, I really acted my socks off. The only trouble was, I was now an established face and couldn't be used again on the show. And to cap it all, when the sequence got to editing, they cut most of it, and all you saw of me was a long shot of my left elbow. Now, that wasn't the only time I would end up as a face on the cutting room floor. Only last week, the film Murder by Decree was shown on one of the satellite channels. Basically, it's Sherlock Holmes, played by Christopher Plummer, tries to catch Jack the Ripper. Now, I had a nice little number on that movie. It was filmed at Elstree, so I got a travel allowance as it's more than 3 miles from the centre of London, even though I was only coming from St Albans, plus my daily fee, and because it was a movie, they paid cash in hand at the end of each day. Useful. Anyway, I was a Cockney coster on that one, popping up all over the place. And it happened I was given a couple of lines of dialogue at a funeral scene. We filmed it, and my big moment was cut from the finished movie, although my face can still be seen in close-up, and it's not a pretty sight on the big screen, I can tell you. Oh, by the way, if Christopher Plummer, Captain Von Trapp out of The Sound of Music, challenges you to a game of darts, be careful. He is pretty darn good with the arrows. The movie itself never really took off, even though it had a hell of a cast. That was Chris Plummer, James Mason as Dr. Watson. What a gentleman he was. James Mason, that is, not the part he was playing. Anthony, later Sir Anthony Quayle. Frank Finlay, who was a big name at the time, and a bunch of pretty good character actors. Oh, you must remember James Mason's speaking voice. It was right up there with Gielgud as one of the most recognisable in the English language. Anyway, picture the scene. The body of a prostitute has just been found, and we're all gathered around the corpse. The police are baffled. Then Holmes and Watson arrived. "Thank God you've arrived," says Lestrade. That was Frank Finlay. And then up bustles Anthony Quayle as the head of Scotland Yard, blustering about confounded amateurs, when this is a job for the real police force. Well, it's not the easiest of sequences, and we have to rehearse quite a lot before it gets to the director's satisfaction. Anyway, we finally get it right and go for a take. It goes swimmingly. The director is rubbing his hands together in glee, and it looks like a keeper, until right at the end, Watson's dialogue comes. James Mason looks up. A fiendish grin spreads over his face, and he reels his line in the most beautiful measured tones. "Quayle, you are an," expletive deleted, "pompous prat." Sir Anthony corpses, and the whole set collapses in laughter. You know, it must have taken at least 20 more takes before we finally got the scene right.